All right, when it comes to value delivery, some pain points that you will see in the real world equals scope creep. Janet, this wasn't on the original Gantt chart. Oh, but the CEO had a great idea for it today. We're just putting it on. Okay, the auto yes head. Do you know that auto yes head? Yeah, that is something where you've really got to sit down and go, wait a second. I remember the course, value delivery. Maybe I need to have a 1-minute conversation with Janet and ask her, what is the value of what we're about to be doing? Like to kind of discover some of that. The next thing, targets missed. We're missing targets left, right, and center. Some other typical pain points that you'll feel if value delivery is not attended to. Exhaustion on a project. Why? Because if everything is critical, nothing is critical, and you will be spreading yourself very thin. And demotivation, yet again, which this all results in demotivation. Do you have 1 or 2 pain points that happens when value delivery is not attended to?
Well, I think probably the biggest one is that if we don't really pay attention to how we're going to make someone's life better with our project, then very often we'll end up having spent a lot of time and a lot of money, but not making anybody's life better. We talked about this a little bit earlier, the notion of on time and on budget. Those are 2 easy things to measure. And because they're easy things to measure, they tend to be how most projects are assessed in terms of success. And really, I've been on a project that was 12 years late and $1 billion over budget. But it was an air traffic control system. I'm really glad we were late and spent more money because I fly in Canadian airspace, which is good. But I've also been on projects where we've been on time and on budget, but the customer was totally disappointed with what they got. So again, the primary measure of success should be about how we're making somebody's life better or safer or faster or more efficient or more fun, whatever it might be. And again, if we can nail that in the charter and everybody is on board with that, that becomes the sounding board for all the decisions we make on a project. It's absolutely essential to do that. And you've talked about scope creep a few times. And scope creep has this really negative baggage with it, sort of thing. And if you're focused solely on time and on budget, then certainly adding more stuff to do is going to be a bad thing. But if you're focused on value and an idea pops up where you could potentially double the value that you deliver for an incrementally small amount of work, that's not scope creep at all. That's great. That's making a much more valuable project for the person involved. So a lot of it has to do with changing our attitudes about what we focus on as what's important on projects, and being real about whether we can deliver on that value as well. Okay. Very often when we focus on time and budget as primary drivers, well, even on any project you're ever on, you're probably going to get 2 things. You're probably going to get a fairly weak expression of scope, but you're going to have a hard and fast date about when you want it done. Kind of an expectation sort of thing. And I've seen way too many projects when they put together their plan for the project to simply take that constraint they're given as a target and cram everything they think they need to do into that calendar space that they have available and say, I guess that's our plan, without any real concern about whether that is feasible to do that amount of work in that time. And it's probably one of the primary drivers behind projects being late, is just biting off way more than you can chew, putting together a plan that is totally unfeasible from day one. So if we're focused on value, and if we can ignore, at least when we're putting our plan together, any constraints in terms of budget or time that we've delivered, just looking at that value and what does it take, what is our story as you talked about earlier, what's our story about how we're going to deliver that value?
Mhm.
Put that together and then balance that against the expectations that you've been given against scope and budget, and
Mhm.
ask yourselves, how well do they fit? Have an expectations discussion around, do we need to relax our expectations on our time constraints or our budget constraints? Do we need to trim the scope back? What are our degrees of freedom to make this a viable project to move forward? And that's a really, really important conversation that we don't really have on projects.
Again, making space. Again, these all tie together, but making space to have these conversations. So when new ideas come out, I am a creative. I love coming up with new ideas, trust me. But when the ideas come out, making sure we throw them through that lens of value and understanding the value that we're generating, not just our direct value measures, which are again the easy to measures, time saving, revenue, and so forth, but the indirect value. For example, if we build a process and a process can be used in another project, again, that's a hard to measure thing at first, but we can always quantify most of these hard to measures. There's usually a way towards quantifying it. Another thing I want to bring up real quickly is a pain point in value that you see in your everyday. An example, and I know it's so small, but I think it's something we can all relate to. It's anytime you have like an iterative thing like writing, something as simple as writing an email. Like, how long should this take me to write? 5 minutes, right? On the project planner in my mind, it's like, okay, it should take me 5 minutes. 45 minutes later, there I am, I'm still writing. And just as a funny thing, I will usually stop somewhere in that point and stop and just put on my little value delivery lens and go, wait, is this worth the investment of time and thinking to continue this at this, to expand the time? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. I'll give you another example. Right now, as we're actually recording this, we had booked about an hour and a half for our session. We're at about, we're going to be heading into 2 hours. But along the way during recording this meeting, we stopped, we asked, are you still good? We're in flow. Should we continue? Like, is this okay to continue? Right? Because we're always checking in on the value of what we're doing. And in our case, in this case, a lot of great momentum, a lot of great stories coming up. So we're like, okay, let's go, let's continue. So yes, it's a little bit of creep in the day. However, the value generated from it, we hope, will be more value to you because ultimately this is for you. So with that in mind, we got 2 more to cover and let's just get through these last 2 here.